We'll be ready to go in just a minute. We're working on some technical issues here. I said we'll be ready to go in just a minute. We're working on some technical issues here. Okay, we are ready to go.
Recording in progress.
Good evening. My name is Sandra O'Connor, and I would like to welcome you to the Greensboro Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Please note that this meeting is being conducted in person and online. If anyone participating online needs help with Zoom during the meeting, please email Mike Kirkman at mike.kirkman, Kirkman, at greensboro-nc.gov. Members of the Commission are appointed by City Council and serve without pay. The Commission reviews all original zoning and rezoning requests for the City of Greensboro. Each Commissioner normally visits each site prior to the meeting. The procedure used at all public hearings is as follows. Planning staff presents background information and makes a recommendation. The applicant will present a short summary on how he or she communicated with the neighborhood and why the request is reasonable. Other persons in favor of the request speak for a combined 10 minutes. Speakers opposed to the request share a combined 10 minutes of speaking time. Those in favor of the request will share 5 minutes of rebuttal time. Those in opposition to the request will share 5 minutes of rebuttal time. Any commission member may ask questions once a presenter has completed their presentation. All commissioners are required to vote unless they have a conflict of interest. In an effort to run meetings more efficiently, the Planning and Zoning Commission may reorganize the meeting agenda. Cases in which no opposition has been expressed to the Planning Department and in which commission members do not feel necessitate in-depth discussion will be moved to the top of the agenda. Staff will provide a shortened presentation for these expedited cases, and applicants have up to 2 minutes to address the Commission if they desire to provide any additional information they want the Commission to know. Expedited cases will then follow the procedures previously outlined. All denied cases and all approved ordinances receiving 6 or more favorable votes will constitute final action unless an appeal is submitted in writing to the Planning Department and the appeal fee is paid within 10 days. All ordinances receiving a majority of favorable votes but less than 6 will be subject to a public hearing by the City Council. When the case is called that you are interested in, people wishing to speak online will need to use the raise hand function, and you will be called upon to speak in the order in which hands were raised. Please find the raise hand function under the reaction button. People wishing to speak in person will need to come to the podium. When you're called upon to speak, please state your name and address for the record. Please also direct all comments and questions to the Zoning Commission. Participants in the Zoom meeting will be able to view the meeting and speak when they are called upon. This meeting is being recorded and televised on the Greensboro Television Network. In addition, the telecast is being closed captioned for the hearing impaired. Also, our attorney will have some opening comments as well.
Thank you, Chair O'Connor, and good evening, everyone. During this evening's meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission will hear a number of rezoning applications. I'd like to remind everyone in attendance that when the Commission considers these rezoning applications, its determinations are based on land uses allowed under the zoning district that's been put forth in the application, as well as any conditions that have been proposed by the applicant. Land use impacts on public infrastructure are relevant in rezoning matters, and it's important to know that the Commission is not here to determine all details of a development. That involves staff input and evaluation that goes beyond the scope of the Commission's work here. If a rezoning would generate a certain amount of traffic flow, Commission members will have been provided with a summary traffic impact study. Meanwhile, many site-specific development features, such as the management of stormwater, are evaluated through the Technical Review Committee rather than in this forum. Lastly, concerns that are not related to land use are not germane to the decisions that the Commission makes on rezoning applications. For example, generalized concerns about crime rates or current or anticipated school capacity and questions about who may own or live at the subject property are not for the Commission's consideration. If there are any questions about matters that are not addressed this evening, those can be referred to the Planning Department or the Technical Review Committee as appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll pause at this time to have all the commissioners introduce themselves. I'll start at my far right.
Warshay Downing.
Keith Peterson.
Catherine Magid.
Zach Engel.
Mary Skeens.
Erica Glass.
Paul G. Gilmore Sr.
And is Mr. Egbert participating online?
Andrew Egbert.
Thank you, Mr. Egbert, and welcome. We have no one registered to speak in opposition at this time on 2123 Bird Street, and I just wanted to confirm that before we proceeded with the meeting. Is there anybody online or in person who wants to speak in opposition to Bird Street? If not, we'll move that to the accelerated agenda. First item, though, on our agenda this evening is approval of the minutes from the March 18th meeting.
Madam Chair, this is Keith Peterson. Make a motion to approve the meetings from March 18th, 2024.
Catherine Magid, second.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson and Ms. Magid. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Thank you. Are there any withdrawals or continuances?
There are not.
All right, then for our accelerated agenda, we will move Bird Street and Tarrant Road to our accelerated or expedited agenda, and then we will address Lawndale after those. So we'll start with Z 24001, a rezoning request from R5, residential single-family 5, to CD RM12, conditional district, residential multifamily 12, for the property identified as 2123 Bird Street, generally described as north of Bird Street and west of Shaw Street, 0.22 acres. Mr. Carter?
Thank you, Chair O'Connor. This is the zoning map of the subject property, which shows that the subject property is zoned R5, and the surrounding properties are also zoned R5. This request is for rezoning from the R5 zoning district to the conditional district RM12 zoning district. This is the aerial map of the subject property, which currently contains a duplex. You can see that on all sides of the property, actually it's residential, but you've got a duplex on the east, single-family dwelling to the north, a duplex, undeveloped land, and single-family dwellings to the east, single-family dwellings to the south, and duplexes on the west. This is the condition that was proposed by the applicant. And in recommending approval, staff notes that the GSO 2040 Comprehensive Plan designates the site as urban central on the future built form map. The Jonesboro Scott Park Neighborhood Plan designates this property as low residential, which is 3 to 5 dwelling units per acre. This rezoning request includes an amendment to the Jonesboro Scott Park request plan, it includes an amendment to that plan to designate this property as moderate residential, which would be between 5 and 12 units per acre. So if you choose to, in recommending approval of this request, you would also be recommending approval of the amendment to the Jonesboro Scott Park neighborhood plan. It'll go to City Council because a plan amendment is associated with this request. So if City Council decides to also approve the request, the result of their action would be to amend the plan for this property. Any questions on that? Okay. The proposed rezoning request supports the comprehensive plans, filling in our framework strategy to encourage higher density infill development and to ensure mixed-use projects both strengthen and add value to the community. The request also supports the comprehensive plans creating great places strategy to meet housing needs and desires with a sufficient diverse supply of housing products, prices, and locations. The proposed CDRM-12 zoning district as condition allows uses that are compatible with existing varied residential uses and densities surrounding the request and limits potential negative impacts on adjacent properties. This request would also permit an existing non-conforming use to become conforming. And with that, I can answer any questions that you have.
Are there any questions from commissioners?
Thank you.
Because this is on the expedited agenda, we do have 2 minutes available for the applicant if you want to make any additional comments to what was already presented.
Yes, good evening. This is Dave Turner. I think Mr. Carter spoke very well about it and gave every bit of information I have. I don't plan to do anything with it but bring it back into a conforming status.
Who was speaking, please? Would you give your name and address?
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is David Turner, 1601 Swananoa Drive, Greensboro, North Carolina, 27410.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Appreciate it. All right. There being no additional comments, we will close the public hearing. Are there any comments or questions from commissioners? If not, would entertain a motion.
Yes, this is Warshay Downing. I'd like to make a motion for agenda item Z2404001. The zoning amendment statement, the Greensboro Planning and Zoning Commission believes that its action to recommend approval of the rezoning request for the property at 2123 Bird Street from R5 Residential Single Family 5 to CDRM 12 Conditional District Residential Multifamily 12 to be consistent with the adopted GSO 2040 Comprehensive Plan and considers the action taken to be reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. The request is consistent with the Comprehensive Plan's future built form map and future land use map. The proposed CDRM 12 zoning district permits uses that fits the context of surrounding areas and limits negative impacts on the adjacent properties. The request is reasonable due to the size, physical conditions, and other attributes of the area. It would benefit the property owner and surrounding community, and approval is in the public interest.
Commissioner Keith Pearson, second.
Thank you, Mr. Downing and Mr. Peterson. Any comments? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, this, because as Mr. Carter pointed out, includes an amendment to the neighborhood plan, this will constitute a favorable recommendation and is subject to a public hearing at the Tuesday, May 21st, 2024 City Council meeting. Thank you. The next item on our expedited agenda is item Z2404003, a rezoning request from R3, Residential Single Family 3, to CDHI, Conditional District Heavy Industrial, for the property identified as 1014 Tarrant Road, generally described as west of Tarrant Road and south of South Chimney Rock Road, 5.56 acres. Mr. Carter?
Thank you, Chair O'Connor. This is the zoning map for the subject property and the surrounding area. The rezoning request is for a rezoning from R3 to Conditional District Heavy Industrial. North of the request is heavy industrial. East of the request is heavy industrial. South of the request is light industrial. And west of the request is R3. This is the aerial map of the subject property, which shows that it's currently vacant or undeveloped. North of the request is fuel storage. And east of the request is an auto repair major use with outdoor storage yard, concrete manufacturing. There was a special use permit for another use on the property, but that special use permit has expired. South of the property is zoned light industrial, and west of the request is zoned R3. West of the request contains undeveloped land. South of the request contains an industrial use. My apologies. This is the condition that has been proposed by the applicant. And in recommending approval of this request, staff notes that the GSO 2040 Comprehensive Plan designates these properties as planned industrial on the future built form map and industrial on the future land use map. The proposed rezoning request supports the comprehensive plan's prioritizing sustainability goal to build economic resilience, expanding the local economy's ability to withstand and adjust to the disruptions and changes at the regional, national, and global scales. The request also supports the comprehensive plan's growing economic competitiveness strategy to increase and preserve the inventory of developable sites compatible with corporate and industrial uses. The proposed CDHI zoning district, as conditioned, allows uses that are compatible with the existing higher intensity industrial and manufacturing uses located in the surrounding area. Care should be taken with respect to building orientation, building materials, building height, and visual buffers to ensure an appropriate transition to the lower density residential uses on adjacent properties. With that, I can answer any questions that you have.
Do we have any questions? If not, the applicant has up to 2 minutes to make any additional comments if you would like. It's not necessary. All right, that passes then without objection. We'll close the public hearing. Any other comments? If not, we'll entertain a motion, please.
Madam Chair, item Z-24-04-003. The Greensboro Planning and Zoning Commission believes that its actions to recommend approval of the rezoning request for the property at 1014 Tarrant Road from R3 Residential Single Family -3 to CDI-HI Conditional District Heavy Industrial to be consistent with the adopted GSO 2040 Comprehensive Plan and considers the action taken to be reasonable and in the public's interest for the following reasons. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan, future built form map, and future land use map. The proposed CD-HI zoning district permit uses that fit the contents of surrounding area and limit its negative impacts on the adjacent properties. The request is reasonable due to the size, physical condition, and other attributes of the area. It will benefit the property owner and surrounding community, and approval is in the public's interest.
Second, Catherine Magid.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson and Ms. Magid. Any further comment? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? None. This approval constitutes final action unless an appeal is submitted in writing to the Planning Department and the appeal fee is paid within 10 days. Anyone may file such an appeal. All such appeals will be subject to a public hearing at the Tuesday, May 21st, 2024 City Council meeting. All adjoining property owners will be notified of any such appeal. We'll now revert to our regular agenda. The next item on our agenda is item Z-24-04-002, a rezoning request from R3 Residential Single Family 3 to CDO Conditional District Office for the property identified as 4117 Lawndale Drive, generally described as west of Lawndale Drive and north of Benton Lane, 0.58 acres. Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Chair O'Connor. This is the zoning map of the subject property and the surrounding area. showing that the property is approximately 0.58 acres and is located west of Lawndale Drive and north of Benton Lane. This is a rezoning request from R3 to Conditional District Office. North of the request is zoned P&R for Parkland and Natural Resources and Conditional District Commercial Low. East and west of the request are R3, and south of the request is Conditional District Commercial Low. This is the aerial map of the subject property in the surrounding area. The subject property currently contains a single-family dwelling. North of the request contains the Greensboro Science Center and a multi-tenant building. East and west of the request contain single-family dwellings, and south of the request contains a multi-tenant building. This is an image of the subject property as seen from Lawndale Drive. This image shows the multi-tenant building that's located north of the request, zoned Conditional District Commercial Low. This image shows a single-family dwelling located northeast of the request, zoned R3. This is undeveloped land located east of the request, zoned R3. And this is another single-family dwelling located this time southeast of the request, also zoned R3. This image shows the multi-tenant building that's located south of the request, zoned CDCL. And this image shows single-family dwellings located west of the request on Lawndale Place, zoned R3. This view is facing north on Lawndale Drive. The subject property is on the left. And this view is facing south on Lawndale Drive. The subject property is on the right. These are the conditions that have been proposed by the applicant, and I can answer, well, not yet. These are the conditions. And in recommending approval, staff notes that the GSO 2040 Comprehensive Plan designates this site as urban general on the future built form map and residential on the future land use map. The proposed rezoning request supports the comprehensive plan's filling in our framework big idea to encourage higher density mixed use walkable infill development. It also supports the comprehensive plan's growing economic competitiveness big idea to build a prosperous, resilient economy that creates equitable opportunities to succeed. The proposed CDO zoning district, as conditioned, permits lower intensity retail, office, and service uses, as well as residential dwellings that are compatible with uses existing in the surrounding area. Additionally, the proposed conditions limit negative impacts of the development on the adjacent properties. Care should be taken with respect to building orientation, building materials, building height, and visual buffers to ensure an appropriate transition to the lower density residential uses on adjacent properties. And with that, I can answer any questions that you have.
Any questions?
I had one. The definition, the upper story residential use, could you explain? That's a new terminology for me.
Yes, ma'am. Upper story residential is a development type, so it's really an architectural element. So you would have, it's generally, by definition, non-residential on the bottom floor, on the ground level, and then you could have upper story, so second, third, fourth floors as required or as allowed by the height limitations in your zoning district could be residential.
It does not need to be owner-occupied, correct?
No, ma'am. We would not regulate owner occupancy.
Any other questions for clarification? All right, then. Thank you. The applicant and anybody in favor of the application has up to 10 minutes. If you'd come to the podium, please, and identify yourself with your name and address.
Good afternoon. My name is Graham Fripp, and I live at 1400 Colonial Avenue. I appreciate all your commitment to our community and for being here this afternoon. When I was looking at doing this rezoning, I've developed the cul-de-sac property behind my property in 2000 is when we platted that. And right now, that's an extremely stable community. And when I built that cul-de-sac out, I erected a 7-foot privacy fence and planted pine trees, evergreens, to be a buffer between my half-acre plus and the residential uses. The north and south properties were both rezoned recently. I worked with the neighborhood to look at some of the proposed zonings that were not compatible. To the south of us, at one point, they wanted to put a cut-through street into Lawndale Place, and then that would increase traffic for Lawndale Place. So we were opposed to that. And now that parcel has been subdivided, and the back on Lawndale Place is residential, and the front is multi-tenants. I have a picture of an illustration, just an illustration at this point, if y'all would like to see it. My intent for the structure is to look residential. And on the ground floor, the first floor, you'll be looking at 4 individually owned office spaces, and they'll be less than 1,000 square feet. On the next floor, we're going to have 4 condominiums, and on the floor above that, there'll be 3 condominiums. So I've limited myself to 7 units residential above, hopefully, 4 offices. Are there any questions for me?
Yeah, a couple. Just looking at this, you mentioned the pine trees and the fence that was erected. Is that on the properties of the houses, or is that on the subject property we're looking at right now?
I believe it is just on the property line of the houses. Okay. I have been in communication with both owners that are behind me. And what I would like to do with them is to reach an agreement to memorialize the fence. Okay. So that if they move, there won't be any questions about whose fence, whose maintenance. And also with the multiple owners on my property in the future, everyone will understand who's responsible for the fence and maintenance.
Okay, yeah, that was the question I had, because in your neighborhood communication, it says you'd like I guess people would like to see the fence kept on the rear west side of the property for privacy, and the modification says you're going to keep the fence, but I don't see it in what we would consider to be a binding situation for us, which is a zoning condition.
As I stated, I'm not sure if that is actually on my property at this point, as far as marking the 4 corners.
Okay.
I've been in communication with both of the property owners behind me, and it is my intent for us to reach an agreement in writing, maybe a 2 or 3 foot fence easement or something that everyone will understand forever.
Okay. That's my question.
Any other questions?
Yes, one question. So parking will just be in the front, is that correct?
I did go through a sketch review, and there were some concerns that were raised with the layout that I made. Mm-hmm. I am not a civil engineer. The sketch review process was very helpful, and so I've got a good starting point now. There will be some modifications for safety as far as fire truck access. There will be some modifications for landscaping. The way I had originally drawn my sketch had parking in front of the building, which faces to the south, and also on the sides. I rotated the building at this point so that the side of the building would be towards the residential uses, and that way they would not have people looking down upon them from their balconies.
Another question. This service porch here, that's going to be in the front, right?
No, sir. And this is really for illustrative purposes right now, but I'm looking at doing 2 stairwells and possibly an elevator in the back for access to the residential. And the service porch, that will allow egress from the offices on that ground floor, and then above that will be really a balcony deck for the residential uses to look out to the west. Did that answer your question, sir?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Any other questions? We have 8 minutes remaining if anyone else would like to speak in favor of the application. Seeing none, we have up to 10 minutes available for anyone who wants to speak in opposition, and I believe we have someone online. If you'd give your name and address.
Chair O'Connor, hold on 1 second. We have a Jennifer Merchiani online.
And Carini, that's me. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you. You can turn your camera on, please.
Yes. It's actually on.
Okay, give us a moment for technical.
Sure.
Thank you.
Oh, right here.
Okay. Now, if you'd give your name and address, would appreciate it.
Yes, my name is Jennifer Mencarini. I reside at 4120 Lawndale Place, Greensboro 27455. And I would like to say good evening to the commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. We bought our house in March of 2020, prior to the pandemic and prior to any commercial development on the other side of our property on Lawndale Drive. Our house is one of the 2 that will be most negatively impacted by Mr. Fripp's proposed development of 4117 Lawndale Drive, and I'm here to express our opposition to his request to rezone that property as CDO. First, I would like to point out that the city's GSO 2040 plan contains points for your consideration that are in support of our position. In big idea number 2, creating great places, it includes strategies that improve livability and strengthen neighborhoods. Goal A, strategy 1, is to protect and enhance the unique character of every neighborhood and to encourage improvements that reinforce the distinct character of each neighborhood. It includes strengthening the role of homeowners like me and my husband in recognizing, enhancing, and celebrating the unique neighborhood character. Mr. Fripp told you that he developed the neighborhood in which we live, the cul-de-sac on Lawndale Place, and it was designed as a secluded, wooded, non-commercial neighborhood adjacent to Country Park. We are asking the Zoning Commission to reinforce the distinct character of our neighborhood in accordance with the GSO 2040 plan. Mr. Fripp's half-acre property is on a hill that rises approximately 20 feet from street level. The commercial properties developed on either side of Mr. Fripp's property put 1-story buildings on grade with the road, which improved the aesthetic of the property along Lawndale Drive to and from the Science Center adjacent to our neighborhood. Our residential property directly abuts this property. In the photo that you were shown during the city's presentation, it was the house to the right of the photograph. I direct your attention to the previously submitted exhibits that show the potential visual impact of a 3-story building on a 20-foot hill directly behind my house and my neighbor's house, and between commercial properties on either side of it that are on grade with Lawndale Drive. Those photos further demonstrate the extreme difference between what is currently there along that entire strip and what is proposed. I would like the commissioners to know that we have not opposed all redevelopment along Lawndale Drive. We worked with Will Stevens of Penn Properties, who developed the commercial property on either side of Mr. Fripp's property. And despite our collaboration, that has not been without significant challenges, due largely to the CrossFit gym he built with garage doors that face our house. You can imagine what we get to listen to all hours of the day and night. The commercial redevelopment that has already taken place has already negatively impacted us and our neighbors in terms of light pollution, noise pollution, destruction of the prior natural wooded environment, and privacy issues. It is not in line with our neighborhood to rezone this property as CDO for multiple reasons. The commercial properties that abut Mr. Fripp's property on Lawndale Drive are zoned as commercial low density with restrictions, not as CDO. The current zoning of 4117 Lawndale Drive as R3 permits construction of a 50-foot house on the property, but that would be a very different outcome from a CDO of offices and residential, such as the number of vehicles coming and going, light pollution, setbacks, and quality of life for our neighbors. Mr. Fripp just mentioned when he was asked a question by one of the commissioners that there would be a balcony deck to the west on the top of the property. That directly overlooks my yard and my house. We are not necessarily opposed to rezoning of this property, but we are vehemently opposed to it being rezoned as a CDO for the purposes Mr. Fripp has outlined. This is not a commercial area, nor should it be turned into one. Considerable of the surrounding. We ask that you decline Mr. Fripp's request and honor the character of our neighborhood by declining his zoning request. Thank you for your time this evening. I believe one of my neighbors is also here.
Thank you. I believe Mr. Anderson was also going to speak. We have 5 minutes and 48 seconds remaining.
Yes, this is Mike Anderson, 4122 Lawndale Place, 27455.
Could you turn your camera on, Mr. Anderson? Yeah.
There.
Thank you.
Okay. The main thing that we want to bring forward is we do the two houses along there. You know, we do share the border with that property, and we want to maintain the character of this neighborhood, and we want to maintain, you know, the buffer, which, you know, Mr. Fripp has already discussed to some degree. And I think that's the biggest challenge that we see, and that has to be worked out between us. If it was approved, we'd have to work it out between us, because otherwise we have to consider the fact that we will have some negative impact from the standpoint of you know, vegetation and so forth that exists between our properties. And that's basically all I have to say for the moment.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Is there anyone else that would like to speak in opposition, either online or in chambers? If you're online, you need to use your raise hand function, please.
Chair Connor, Jennifer wishes to speak again.
Pardon me? Jennifer? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. If you just identify yourself again, please.
Absolutely. Jennifer Mancarini, 4120 Lawndale Place. I just want to point out that Mr. Stevens has been incredibly helpful to us throughout this process, and it's really our issue is with his tenant and not with him. So I just want to make that clear for the record.
Thank you for the clarification. We do still have 4 minutes and 52 seconds if anyone else wants to speak in opposition. Seeing none, we'll move to the rebuttal time. So the applicant has up to 5 minutes to make any rebuttal statements. And if you'd please just identify yourself again for the record. Thank you.
Yes, Graham Fripp, 1400 Colonial Avenue, Greensboro, North Carolina. I just want to say that the integrity of that neighborhood is very important to me. I'm very proud of what was built there, and if you look back at the transfer of properties, most of the people living there are just the second people. So in 24 years, it's the second owner. There might be one or two that are third owners, but it's a very stable neighborhood. And now I believe there are not any more questions as what might happen around them with vacant land. There was a large strip on Lawndale Place that could have gone commercial, and we were able to keep it residential, and it's under construction now. So as far as Lawndale Place and the cul-de-sac, it will be very much the same as it is now. The people on the west side of the cul-de-sac will not even be able to see my property because of the two homes that adjoin mine. And I will work with the Mencarinis and also the Andersons to work out an agreement to make sure that the fence is not a question in the future and that we maintain a landscape buffer there.
I do have and I just want to ask because I typically, I think if you look back at any case that I've been involved in, height has always been a bit of a concern for me.
Yeah, Mr. Engel.
Yes. Every property that is zoned, if you look at the conditions to the north, to the south, and to the east, has a height restriction of either 20 or 30 feet. And you're asking me for double that.
At this point, that is a number not to exceed. I believe in looking at the elevations and the plans that I'm trying to put together that we should be well below 50 feet. But I did not want to handicap myself at this time. I am not a big fan of steep angled roofs, and it's my plan not to have one on this building.
But you understand that I have to look at what I'm presented.
Oh, I do completely understand. You know, looking at infill and trying to get a higher density on a smaller property, I can't go down.
I know. No, and I understand that. And you know, it's obvious to me that looking at this, it's going to be super difficult to say that this is going to remain R3. I'm just trying to understand if what I'm being presented with is where I'm willing to go from an increased perspective. So I just put that out there just to, you know, consider and simmer.
Yes, sir. And as I said, as I move forward through the approval process, I strongly believe that the height of the finished building will be less than 50 feet. That is my intention. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Mr. Peterson?
Yeah, I got one more question. So the resident had an issue with her property. You can look down on her property from your proposal, but you told us the way it's going to be structured is like north and south. And so the two peaks on the top will not be looking down on the property directly behind it, so it'll be looking pretty much north of the property instead of east.
Yes, sir. I apologize that I misspoke earlier. The way I intend to position the building on the site, the front facade will face south and the rear facade will face north.
Okay.
Which means the side of the building will face to the west where the property owners are residential.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Downing.
So I see that you met in person and you talked on the phone, et cetera. How many times, I guess, did you all meet in person? And were the individuals on the call tonight, were they present for you all to discuss the ramifications and the issues thereof?
That is a good question. I met with the property owner on the north and south of me where it's commercial now on 2 occasions, and we have stayed in contact and are in contact.
Okay.
I met with the property owners behind me 1 occasion with the Mencarinis, and I've tried to keep open communications with them. And then I've also met with the Andersons, and both of them spoke via Zoom a minute ago. I mailed out 24 letters to the neighborhood. I heard back from one lady further down on Lawndale Place, and she was interested in learning more if more people came forward. Unfortunately, I did not hear from anyone else that I mailed letters to. I respect people's privacy and understand that they may not want it to get involved, but I am available if anyone has any questions.
Okay. But it seems like the 4 top concerns as outlined here would be the character of the neighborhood, so that's something in question. But at the same time, you think about the house that is currently there, it is dilapidated, right? But it's also on the hill. Is there a plan to level that entire hill out to make it flat?
No, sir.
Okay.
My plans are to preserve the tree canopy There's two nice oaks on the property now that offer buffer from the
I'm sorry, can we
residential.
jump in real quick? Because we just want to caution the commission, we're talking a lot about site plan related things here, and ultimately those are going to have to be worked out through the technical review process, and Mr. Fripp is talking through his intentions of doing things on there. We can't hold him to that plan because it still has to go through plan review. So I just want to caution the commission not to get too far into the weeds on some of these conversations.
All right, perfect.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkman.
That's good enough for me.
Thank you. We still have 3 minutes and 47 seconds remaining of rebuttal time for anyone in favor of the application. Seeing none, then we have up to 5 minutes of rebuttal time for those opposed. Would anyone like to speak again in opposition?
I would. I raised my hand, Madam Commissioner.
Okay. Yes, if you'd identify yourself again, and please go ahead.
I will. Jennifer Mancarini, 4120 Lawndale Place, Greensboro, 27455. I appreciate the commissioner's questions, which go straight to the heart of our concerns about this property being built. And it's very important to recognize that this would not just be a 50-foot building. It will be a 50-foot building on top of a 20-foot hill, which means that from our perspective, it will be a 70-foot high structure because of the hill, because Mr. Fripp does not want to regrade down to street level. There are ways he could keep those trees and regrade the rest of the property. I'm not trying to get into details, but that's an issue for us. It's not just the height of the building, it's the fact that it won't be regraded down to street level. So that's one thing. It is not reasonable to place a building of that size on a 20-foot hill that overlooks two residential properties and residential properties across the street. We are not suggesting that that property stay R3. We know that's not a realistic request, but we do think that this kind of structure on a half-acre property is not supported by the GSO 2040 plan, and it is a detriment to the neighbors and the surrounding community to have this essentially monstrosity built that doesn't fit with the neighborhood at all. It doesn't even fit with the other commercial properties in the neighborhood. And I understand Mr. Fripp wants to develop the land, but part of the process here is considering who else lives around. And I'm just as important as Mr. Fripp in terms of owning property, and so is Mr. Anderson and his wife. So I would respectfully ask the commission to take into consideration what it means for us to have to live next to a property like that. The integrity of the neighborhood is important. And when Mr. Fripp mentioned that he only got responses from us, from Mr. Anderson and from me, he mentioned the strip that could have gone commercial. Mr. Stevens worked with us to keep that residential on the Lawndale Place facing side. But those are the other closest residential properties that would be affected, and they aren't even in existence yet because they're being constructed right now. So it's a little bit unfair to say he didn't hear from neighbors who are proximate because those folks don't have houses to move into yet. So I just wanted to point that out as well, that there will be more residential homes on our street within the next 6 to 9 months.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for hearing my concerns.
And we have 2 minutes and 39 seconds available for anyone else in opposition. Seeing no other speakers, we'll close the public hearing. Do we have any questions or comments from commissioners? Ms. Gaines?
Mr. Kirkman, I don't have my LDO in front of me. The maximum height in R3 is
50 feet.
Is 50
or 3
feet.
stories, correct.
So if this property stayed R3, someone could still build a building 50 feet high. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Because what I'm hearing is it's the height, and yet it can be 50 feet in its current zoning. And to keep those trees, you can't be pulling dirt out. You've got to leave the elevate. I'm talking out loud here. You've got to keep the elevation where it is if you're going to keep the trees. So, all right, you've answered my question on the height. Thank you.
Mr. Engel?
I'll start us off, and we'll kind of see where we go from there. There are two things that are at play here tonight that I think, are important. One, I always want to be supportive of development. Two, we need residential in the community. Where I am struggling with this is I feel like we've gone a bit too far in the proposal that I have in front of me. And I'll lay out the reasons for that just, to kind of put out there. The first thing for me is that typically when we have even a multifamily proposal come to us and it's next to R3, they might limit it to 40 feet or to 50 feet when they could build up to 60 or 80 feet. In this instance, for me, because of the intensity of the use, I would want to see it to be a little bit less, especially considering all of the properties around it. As I look at the conditions in detail, right, the materials conditions, the height conditions, that are limiting it down to a single story, to me, this again goes from what are one-story buildings, typically 20 feet, you're going to see maybe one in an architectural feature, and we're proposing 3 with 7 units on top of 4 retail spaces. I kind of tend to agree with the neighbors on this one, that this is a bit too far. I also understand that today's construction costs are pretty heavy, and I get that too. And so there has to be something to allow you to, but I still think that we've gone a bit too far. So I'm going to vote against it tonight with the hopes that you'll retool with the neighbors. You may pass tonight, I don't know, but I'll simply say that that's where my perspective is. I will say, I don't think that this is going to be R3. It's a question to me of whether it's going to go to CDO with what I'm presented. I don't see it getting there, but if I were presented tonight with something that was a little bit smaller and the buffers were a bit better defined, I would probably vote for it. I'm just not there. So I'll leave that to the rest of the group. We've closed the public hearing, so we're kind of at comments and going from there. So,
do we have any other comments?
This is Andrew Egbert.
No.
I just, everything Zach just said, he said it as he always does, much better than I could, but I agree with Zach, and that's why I'll be voting against it as well.
Thank you, Mr. Egbert. I will comment that for the front facing on Lawndale Drive, this seems appropriate to me. The figurative drawing is attractive to me in that it is really 3 stories. However, that is just for an idea. It is not anything that is required from the zoning that's proposed. And what we have to look at is the use. I am sensitive to the height for the backyard neighbors, but it would be back to back rather than on somebody's front. And so I'm waffling a little bit on this because I understand Mr. Engel and Mr. Egbert's point of view, but I'm probably inclined to vote in favor of this for where it fits on that drive. But I understand the other point of view. Anyone else?
Yes, I'd just like to say, after looking at the site, and there's a shopping strip on each side of this hill where the house is on now. And so I'm certain that the 2 people who are living behind your house have experienced already whatever impact they've gotten from those 2 strip malls and are living with it comfortably. I think you have said that it would not exceed 7 units, and I think that we need infill, and I think that this is a perfect example of adding infill. And so I will be voting in favor of this, and in the hopes that you will sit with the neighbors and make certain that there's some type of fencing and so forth between where you are developing a barrier of some sort that's suitable for them to feel comfortable with this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baggett. Anyone else? Mr.
Yes.
Downing?
I have also vacillated back and forth on this particular matter, but I will encourage continuous dialogue with the neighbors. And to my fellow commissioner's point, I do understand what the neighbors are saying, right? Very important. I do believe that the fencing and those other mechanisms of privacy would be very important and instrumental, but you all can work that out through dialogues and conversations, I believe. So I will be supporting this particular initiative or this particular item on our agenda today for those various reasons, but I do want to give credulity to the neighborhoods because that is very important, and the future neighbors, so very important.
Mr. Gilmer?
Yes, Madam Chairman. I will be supporting the development. I believe in infill, and I think on the height thing, I think that it'll be worked out, so I will be supporting it. I think different type housing units need to go in different neighborhoods. We all have to bear that burden for affordable housing or whatever. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have if there are no other comments, do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion for item Z24-04002. The Greensboro Planning and Zoning Commission believes that its action to recommend approval of the rezoning request for the property at 4117 Lawndale Drive from R3 Residential Single Family 3 to CDO Conditional District Office to be consistent with the adopted GSO 2040 Comprehensive Plan and considers the action taken to be reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan's future built form map and future land use map. The proposed CDO zoning district permits uses that fit the context of the surrounding area and limits negative impact on the adjacent properties. The request is reasonable due to the size, physical conditions, and other attributes of the area. It would benefit the property owner and surrounding community, and approval is in the public interest.
Commissioner Gilmer, second.
Thank you, Mr. Downing and Mr. Gilmer. Any further comment? All those in favor of the motion, please signify, and you may want to also raise your hand since we may have some opposition. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay. Opposed. Andrew Egbert.
Thank you. So we have 3 nays. This constitutes final action, approval, unless an appeal is submitted in writing to the Planning Department and the appeal fee is paid within 10 days. Anyone may file such an appeal. All such appeals will be subject to a public hearing at the Tuesday, May 21st, 2024 City Council meeting. All adjoining property owners will be notified of any such appeal. Thank you. That concludes our public hearings for the evening. Do we have anything else from the Planning Department?
We don't have any other items. I know everybody always asks for next month. We do have a long agenda for next month. I think we have 12 cases right now. So, yeah, the break is over.
That means dinner too, right?
Yes, more than 10.
All right. Anything from commissioners?
I just wanted to make a quick comment.
Yes, Ms. Baggett.
Okay. So we haven't, because we've been expediting a lot of cases, we just haven't taken time to just review what we've done here. So in January and February, we passed, and the City Council also passed, 818 housing units. Okay? And it broke down, and it also included at NCA&T, a residential hall that was really desperately needed, and parking spaces for 252 students, and a cookout that they're going to love. But I'd just like to say that it's been very interesting to look at the breakdown. District 1 was 59 units. District 2, which is Goldie Wells, was 148. District 3, Matheny, was 76. Even Nancy Hoffman's, which is really in the middle of the city, 41 units, and Tammy Thurham, 494 units. And 95% of the homes are being built on annexed property, and 55% of these new townhomes and other units is on 55% annexed land. So I just wanted to take a moment to recount that.
Thank you. When we're in the housing crisis that we're really in terms of availability and affordability. It's very helpful to hear these numbers. So thank you very much for taking the time to do that. We appreciate it. Anything else? If not, we will wish a happy birthday this week to Mr. Kirkman and Miss Magid that are coming up. And unless anyone objects, we'll adjourn.
Okay.